Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Michael Talks Football channel. Even though the international break is over, we are going to be 50 days away from the World Cup when you are viewing this video. So, the grind is continuing. The tension is high. Who will be world champion this year in the World Cup? But I got a guest on. We're going to be reviewing and a tier list, basically our confidence for every nation in the World Cup. All 32 teams. Are we high about them, or is it time to push the panic button on certain national teams? But I got my guest, a fantastic international football content creator, Football Pharaoh. How are you doing today?
Hey, Michael. Thanks for having me on again. It's good to be back on. I'm doing all right. It's hard to believe we're 51 days away from the World Cup, and with this most recent international break wrapping up, we get to really look to assess where the dust has fallen after this last window, and get a pulse on where these teams are. And I'm looking forward to it.
The only good thing about this international break from a personal view was that Finland stayed up in the Nations League Division B. That was the that was the only good thing from this international break. Otherwise, the USA, we'll discuss about them. But people, give your thoughts in the comment section down below. How are you feeling about your national team? If you're from Iran, Netherlands, the USA, England, let me know your thoughts, because soon the squads will be announced. I think in a couple weeks' time we'll start seeing the squads, and it's just that tension is building up. And then slowly but surely, the first game between Qatar and Ecuador will soon approach. But as you guys can see here, we have the tier list. We have 5 different levels. Confident, so I think pretty much explanatory. Good, watch out. So kind of this team is on the rise, and we should be watching out for them. And with the way they're playing in the confidence level, still same feeling about the squad. Lacking right now, and then panic right now. So these are all 5 tier lists. I think we should start, Football Pharaoh, with Australia, who only played 2 games, and they played against New Zealand on both occasions. So it's difficult to gauge where they're at the moment. Graham Arnold's side, but how are you feeling about Australia heading into the World Cup, and right now, especially after the international break?
It feels like there's been very little improvement in Australia in the last few years. Just like in 2018, they managed to qualify for the World Cup by the bare skin of their teeth, this time coming through on penalties in that playoff against Peru. They enter this tournament with a lot of questions, and I think that Australia doesn't have very many prolific stars on their squad, and there's questions over the coaching as well. I would not hit the panic button for them, just because of the fact, like you said, we haven't really seen much of them since their qualification in June. I would say that they look primed to potentially play the role of group stage fodder again, and I think they're lacking, honestly. That's why.
But do you feel any different about them after this international break? Because I have the same feelings as you. I feel like, okay, Australia did well to qualify to the World Cup, but I really don't think this squad is good enough compared to what we have seen in the past from the Socceroos.
No, definitely not. It's a far cry away from the '06 and even the 2010 generation that did really well in those World Cups.
I was saying that 2014 squad was good as well for Australia. I thought they were very competitive in that tough group they had.
They were. It's kind of sad because they seem consistently good enough to come out of Asia, but once it comes to the world stage, they become sort of like more of a consistent first round type of team. And I just don't know if they're going to have enough to come through a very difficult group. Again, like the rematch set with France and Denmark. I think they're lacking right now. I think that would be a somewhat fair categorization for Australia.
Okay, I kind of agree with that. Even though they got some promising youngsters in their squad, and I still don't rate Graham Arnold, but he did a good enough job, and they're definitely going to be a very difficult team to break down, in my opinion, in the World Cup. So they can play spoilers, and we've seen the World Cup curse. They could finish second, so anything's possible. What about Saudi Arabia? Obviously, we both love Hervé Renard, a fantastic manager. I think he's the longest ever. Well, actually, that might be false if I'm not mistaken. But Saudi Arabia played 2 0-0 draws against Ecuador, very tough team from CONMEBOL, and then obviously the United States when they had a lot of injuries and they were playing their backup goalkeeper. How are we feeling about Saudi Arabia? Of course, I think goal scoring is going to be lacking, but they missed their top 2 strikers, if I'm not mistaken, during this international break. So how do you feel about the Saudis?
They did. They were a somewhat depleted squad that fielded against the U.S. I still feel relatively the same about them. I think they're a side that cannot be underestimated. This also being the first World Cup on Middle Eastern soil, this will be the closest Saudi Arabia gets to hosting a World Cup in anytime soon, with Qatar right next door. They could experience a little bit of a bump if they have sufficient like traveling fan base. I don't anticipate them to really come out of the group. I think on paper and in practicality, they're probably the worst team in Group C. But they had a very strong qualification, and Herb Renard has gotten, for the most part, the best out of this team. They qualified for the World Cup relatively comfortably. The question will be, can they break through and, for the first time since 1994, put a real dent in the World Cup and come out of the first round? I would say they've stayed relatively steady, so I would put them in the still the same category.
Yeah, and I think also we saw that during AFC World Cup qualifiers that they're a very difficult team to break down. They're very good defensively, but always was the goal scoring was lacking. Like against Japan, I think they only scored one goal. Australia, I think it was a 0-0. So that's going to be the key thing for Saudi Arabia if they want to have a chance of advancing out of the group. And hey, look, they still got a chance, and they're going to have a lot of fans like you discussed about. And I agree with you. I think I'm still feeling the same about the Saudis. Now, Croatia is an interesting team at the moment. I mean, Zlatko Dalic, he's doing a marvelous job. Not even the mere fact of making it to the World Cup to the final, but now the job he's doing with a much younger squad. Even though the midfield, I think one of the best midfielders we will see in the World Cup. But how are you feeling about Croatia? I think a lot of people were down about them after the Euros 2020. It was a little bit disappointing. They tried to still go with the same squad, but now you see the new faces, and they're playing some good football. I have to be honest.
Yeah, they really were. I was one of those people that were not particularly down on them, but I had quashed sort of my expectations just because I thought that they were on a little bit of like a downturn or slowing down quite a bit. But the way they responded in this Nations League after losing that opening match, they got thumped by Austria. You may remember last June.
Yep, 3-0.
They night and day they flipped on a different switch and they just bulldozed through this group and ended up topping. And we're going to see them in the Nations League final phases next summer. I think they're humming along quite nicely, and I think Zlatko Dalic being there for as long as he has, he's managed to keep this team playing at a very high level. And in a competitive group with Belgium, Canada, Morocco, I think still on paper they're easily a top two side in that group. Should come through. And one thing I've been very impressed by was the integration of some of these young players, like in midfield, like Lovro Maher. He plays for Rennes, I believe.
Yep.
He was played a pivotal role in the Nations League, scoring a couple of goals in those last two games. And I think the squad right now has a really good blend of that veteranship between like their more prolific star players and the younger ones coming up through the ranks. And I don't know if they can repeat what they did in 2018, but a knockout stage performance is not only not out of the question, but maybe slightly favored.
I agree. I would put them in confident. I think they're going into this World Cup with huge confidence, and they should be because I think they've now, like you talked about, I think they've really blended in the youngsters very, very well, mixed in with the leadership of a Modric or a Lovren and these sort of guys. Guivardiol, the center back. I mean, he's only 20 years old. He is a super, super talent. The only question mark I have with this team is, can the striker, whether it's Kramaric, Petkovic, I'm not even going to include Budimir because Budimir is not that good, can they just get enough goals? Because if you're just going to rely on Modric getting the goals from the midfield, is that going to be enough? That's why Mandzukic was so pivotal in 2018, because he was that guy in the tough moments, he could get you a goal. But I'm really confident on Croatia. I really like this team at the moment. I was kind of down on them after the Euros, but seeing that they kind of refreshed the squad, I think was deeply, deeply needed. Do you want to say something?
Oh yeah, no, for sure, for sure. I think if they play their cards right, they can even top that group.
Yeah, I fully agree. I fully agree. Ecuador isn't Alvaro's side. Like they're excellent at home, right? In Quito or wherever. But it just seems whenever they go away from Ecuador, they're not the same team at the moment, and I'm a little bit worried for them in this World Cup because they got, I think, 2 0-0 draws against Saudi Arabia and Japan. And they're also a team that they need to find a striker, find some goals from other sources because they're lacking in the goal scoring department. How do you feel? Because we were both like speaking praises of Ecuador because of their performances in CONMEBOL World Cup qualifiers. But I don't know. It's just kind of derailed a little bit at the moment.
I respect a lot what Gustavo Alfaro has done. I think that I read somewhere Ecuador on average should be among the youngest teams that are being sent to Qatar this year. they don't really have any world-class players on their squad, do they? And they qualified because they got off to a very strong start, and they're one of the very few teams who were able to eke out slim results against Brazil and Argentina, which is essentially the recipe to qualifying. Do well at home. But they have a lot of young, exciting players coming through. I know this guy,
Moises Caicedo,
Gonzalo Plata.
yeah.
They have a few that play also at MLS as well for like LAFC. I think that for Ecuador, this is a project of the next phases of World Cups, maybe in like a 2026 and beyond. I think that this tournament is looking like it's going to be mostly somewhat of an exposure for this young crop of players. And I don't know if I'm kind of hovering between lacking right now or still feel the same. I would think I would put them to still feel the same, because the way that they qualified suggested that they hinted at that little bit of like lacking that sort of cutting edge and, like you said, the goal scoring prowess. But I think they could make a case for coming out of their group because of the fact they're in Qatar's group. So, yeah, how about you? I still feel the same about them.
I feel the same. I don't feel as highly about them at the moment compared to what I was about maybe 6-7 months ago. I just think they need to sort out their striker problem. I don't know if it's going to be Enner Valencia at the end of the day. Even though Enner Valencia is quite old, but he's reliable in the big moments. So they might just look to him and getting the big time goals. But yeah, I don't know. I just feel like because it's outside of Golden Bowl, they might struggle a little bit. On paper, they should be beating Qatar, but we know that's going to be the first game of the World Cup, so that could be very difficult. And then they have Senegal and Netherlands. It is going to be very difficult for Ecuador, but I kind of feel the same a little bit about them. Spain, Luis Enrique. What do you think, Football Pharaoh? I don't know. I'm a little bit iffy in a way. Iffy, you could say that.
Yeah. Well, they still haven't really solved that striker issue, have they? We talked about Ecuador just a minute.
Wait. Sorry, Football Pharaoh. Their front three, and this might be the front three. Who knows? Their front three against Portugal was Sarabia, Ferran Torres, and Morata.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Spain, I feel like they're a side that still shows those flashes of brilliance here and there of the old Spain. And you may remember in the last European Championship, they gave Italy arguably their toughest matchup.
Oh, they should have won the game.
I remember the setup to Morata's goal in that semifinal was brilliant. It's hard to get a read on Spain because they look like world beaters at any given moment because of their pedigree, but at the same time, you really feel like they're lacking in sort of like a consistent, reliable goal scorer. When you have guys like Morata that's either hot or cold in any given game, it doesn't inspire a lot of confidence. And, looking at their group and dissecting the bracketology and all of that, if they don't come out first in their group, they could get a round of 16 game against Belgium, maybe meet Brazil in the quarterfinals. For me, and we might have a little bit of disagreement here, I'm not sure. They're good by default, but I still feel relatively the same about them as I did a few months ago, which is I don't quite trust them to get a string of consistent results going to really be there all the way until the end, challenging for the title. I wouldn't be surprised if they're in the final. I would not be surprised.
I wouldn't be surprised either. I just think that the goal scoring is going to be an issue. They can dominate games. They can keep all the possession, but with all that possession, if you're not going to score the goals, what's the point in keeping the possession? And that's, I think, been evident in these last two games, especially against Switzerland and Portugal. Even though they won the game against Portugal, they didn't create anything for the first 80 minutes. But then, when Pedri and Gavi came onto the game and Busquets, completely changed the whole outcome.
Yeah. That match they played against Sweden at the last Euros, 85% possession.
Oh God, yeah,
that was disgusting. Only the purists could love that.
Yeah, but I think we kind of share the same sentiment about them. That yes, they're lacking in goal scoring, but we kind of knew that before, and that they haven't solved that issue. And until they solve that issue, then I think we can speak about them. Okay, they're going to be one of the favorites. I think they're in and around like 5th to 10th favorite for the World Cup at the moment. Okay,
they could pop off at any moment, and if they do, they're going to be
because they have quality. Because they have the quality to do so. Didier Deschamps, France. I'm not getting 2010 vibes because Roman Dominique was an absolute disaster, and we all knew that. But there is something going on with this French team. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the witchcraft or Mbappe or Deschamps with his favorites, but I'm not saying panic, but I'm saying definitely lacking right now because we know they have the quality, and they showed it against Austria. Good for one game. They were good for 10 to 15 minutes against Denmark, and then they just imploded. I know they had a lot of injuries and this sort of stuff, but France have so much quality. What do you think, Football Pharaoh? Obviously, look, in the World Cup, they could just switch like this and become world champions again, but there is something about this team that doesn't seem right.
Yeah. With France, I agree. I don't see a 2010 style meltdown. There's not obvious warning signs that are flashing squad instability and infighting, of course. The Nations League is really hard to interpret because you get a sense that maybe something is not quite gelling in time for this French team, but also it could be the case that they were messing around or
motivation wasn't there.
Yeah, or on autopilot, and how we'll see them in the World Cup will be essentially what we saw in the Austria game. And what's going to be interesting to see is we're going to get an answer as to whether or not in the World Cup, whether this is indicative of current form or it's just a boring answer of the quality of the opposition. Because you look at their group in the Nations League, Croatia, they're on fire at the moment. Denmark, very much so. I rate them highly. But then they come up against Tunisia and Australia, and you look at that and you think, well, even if they're off, they should come through that. I know that Deschamps was experimenting with lineups. They still have a lot of quality, ridiculous, and they should come out of their group and break that champions curse at the very least. At the moment, though, given what we've seen in the Nations League, I think they're sort of lacking. I just don't know exactly how much of that is of them, horsing around, or if it's Deschamps has a real issue on his hands.
Time will tell, because if they go out of this World Cup group stage, I mean, the curse might be the greatest curse ever. And you don't want to win the World Cup, then might as well not even qualify for the next World Cup, because you go out of the group stage, because surely not this French team. I know we said the same thing about Italy in 2010. Remember, they had Paraguay, Slovakia, New Zealand, and they didn't even come out of that group. But I don't know. There's something about this French team that doesn't sit well in my tummy at the moment, and it needs to change. I don't know whether it's dropping Griezmann or switching back to a 4 in the back formation because Deschamps is keeping this 5 in the back. There's a lot of question marks, so that's going to be a big thing, I think, in France. Is all the papers going to be writing about this and that, and how will that then affect the squad? I think France will be the most fascinating team at this World Cup. Not just because of they're the defending world champions. It's just all the storylines and all the fantastic players that they do have in their squad. Ghana. Now, Ghana are a bit difficult as well because we know all the new players that they had, Lamptey, Inaki Williams, and these sort of guys. They had a game against Brazil. Look, you're going to lose to Brazil. They played a very attacking lineup. I was surprised about that from Otto Adoi. Then they had, I think, a 1-0 win over Nicaragua, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember. But how do you feel about Ghana? Still feeling the same about them, lacking right now? It's a bit difficult to see where Ghana are at the moment.
I think they're happy to be here because I don't think even themselves expected to qualify as recently as earlier this year. We know they had an abysmal Africa Cup of Nations, which included a loss to the Comoros Islands. And they come up against a very lackluster Nigerian side who was their rivals, and they managed to squeeze through via the away goals tiebreaker. Ghana, I think they're lacking, but I say that just because I don't think they're quite good enough to really mount a serious challenge in their group. Of course, they'll have a little bit of a motivation for revenge against Uruguay for obvious reasons. I think they're lacking. Well, I mean, you could put that and still feel the same because I've always felt that they've been lacking. I believe they recently called up 4 or 5 new internationals that pledged to Ghana from the under-20s that were previously pledged to different countries. So that's a little bit exciting for them. You have some youngsters coming through that are taking an interest in their homeland. I am interested to see how some of the younger players do in this tournament. Like, you need some guys to step up and take the mantle on from the Ayew brothers. Ayew brothers have been there since the beginning of time. I
I
think.
don't know how Jordan Ayew starts in this team still. I don't understand.
Yeah, they've been there for quite a few World Cup cycles now. But you got guys like 20-year-old Kamaldeen Suleimana, Mohamed Kudus plays for Ajax.
Such a good player. Oh, I love Kudus.
He is, and I don't have much else to comment on them because, like you said, there's an air of unfamiliarity with them. I just think they're not going to have enough, man. They could play spoiler in their group to somebody else, but I don't think they're going to have enough.
I kind of feel the same. I would put them still feeling the same. It's just that they don't have enough time, I think, to build chemistry, right? You can do it as much as you want on the pitch, on the training field, but in-game cohesion and chemistry is vital, and they don't have that enough. And I said that when they called up all these players that, okay, it's all wonderful. We saw that the same thing with Jamaica. And what happened to Jamaica? It's a complete disaster. Obviously, it was other things in Jamaica, but there is just something about building a chemistry throughout the World Cup qualifiers. And let's see how it's going to affect this Ghana side, but they're going to have motivation for that Uruguay game. All they need to do is just win one game, and then get to that third match day against Uruguay, and then anything can happen, because the whole motivation will be there, and that's probably going to be the game of the group stage, because of all the things that have happened in the past. Let me just do this right away, Football Pharaoh. So, yeah, good?
Really? You don't think they're in full-blown panic mode? I think they're going to lose to San Marino like 5-0 in the groups. Yeah, I know. Brazil is like in its own tier. It's like confident and then under in parentheses, obviously. So, yeah, agree. Brazil is one of the big favorites, if not the favorite. And I think right now they got a storm going on. And talk about clicking at the right moment, coming off of a supremely dominant World Cup qualification for the second time. Except this time they actually broke the points record, still remaining undefeated. I think TJ's got this squad figured out, and I think they're really feeling it. And what's really interesting is that I like about this Brazil team, they don't have like just one go-to captain. They rotate it. And I like that because it gets everybody experience in that sort of leadership role in the squad, whether it's Richarlison or Jesus or anyone else. And we're going to really see what Brazil's made of when they come up against top European opposition now.
Oh, yeah.
This is where they really have to show and shine outside of South America.
Also, this is probably going to be, in my opinion at least, Neymar's last World Cup. So he needs to show out. And we know in Brazil, if you don't win a World Cup, you're not a legend in that country. I'm sorry. Because all the legends in that country have won a World Cup. So the pressure is going to be on him. And I think it's good that you said they have the good leadership, but then also they have a wonderful blend of these exciting youngsters like Anthony, Rafinha, Vinicius Jr., Lucas Paqueta, all of these guys. The only question mark I have with them is their fullbacks. But that's such a picking at something like, oh, just a little thing right there. Otherwise, this team they're on super confident. I mean, I wish I could have made another tier, but it would have been them and another team that we'll discuss about in that level.
One thing I'll say about Brazil that could be a caveat is they're in a pretty tough group. We know for the most part.
Serbia first game. Watch out, though. Watch out.
Yeah. 2 European teams in the group that are now going to be in the Nations League, League A next season. Switzerland, we know they can be anybody on their day. Serbia, they're coming together at the right time. I think much more so improved from where they were last cycle. It's going to be a tough group. And I know that when you map out Brazil's path to the final, it's a pretty tough path.
It is.
They could play like Portugal, Uruguay next round, then play Spain, Germany, and then play Argentina. It's going to be but if anyone can do it, it's Brazil.
No doubt about that. So yeah, Brazil are definitely heading into this World Cup with super confident. Now, this is an interesting team. They made a very ballsy decision in sacking Skokic, and they brought in Carlos Queiroz. Obviously, Football Pharaoh is very familiar with Carlos Queiroz. And now, they're just playing Carlos Queiroz football. Very structured, don't concede, get the 1 or 2 goals, and that is enough. Now, we know the whole situation going on in Iran. We're not going to discuss about that. We're going to. I don't know how much it's going to affect the squad when it comes to the World Cup, but on the field, I think they now look like a happier squad. I really do. I think there was a little bit of turmoil with Skokic, but now with Carlos Queiroz, it seems like a lot of the players are happy with that decision. I'm gonna put them in good and watch out because I think they are clicking at the right moment here.
I
What do you
agree.
say about Iran?
I agree.
Team Melly.
I was gonna say that's the first team we should put in that category. Yeah, if you're gonna sack a manager this close to the World Cup, one of the best ways to do it is bring back somebody who is more intimately familiar with the squad. This is
Yeah.
now his third stint. So for Carlos, it's like coming in and he's been there for at least a few months already, pretty much, because he knows these players, he knows these guys. And I agree. I think with the recent Masa Amini protests and everything going on there, sometimes tragic events like that can have a very galvanizing effect on a sports team.
Mm.
And I think Iran is going to be pumped and ready for this World Cup. I saw highlights of their match, their win against Uruguay in a friendly. I think they are they have a little bit more oomph, a little bit more teeth up front in attack this time than they did in previous cycles. So I think that in a group like this with England and the United States, Kirosh ball could be very well suited, and they could end up getting results where they may not be expected to.
And what's one thing they haven't done ever in their history, football pharaoh?
Advance out of the first round. But there's a first time for everything.
Exactly.
And they're going to be a real threat, I think. And Qatar is just right across from the Strait of Hormuz.
Yep.
So I mean,
They're gonna have a lot of fans, I bet. So, yeah, I think people got to watch out about Iran. I think that they're going into this tournament with much more confidence than what they were under Skokic. I felt like it was getting a little bit dire, the situation, and just not the blend and the chemistry wasn't good. Now, Carlos Queiroz, they've done it before with each other. Let's go again.
yeah,
South Korea are also interesting in the way that I don't really feel any different, but I feel like they could be better. That's kind of what I feel with South Korea. If Son ain't scoring, I don't know where the goals are going to come for this team, and yeah, I don't know. What do you say about South Korea? I
I
think
have.
I still feel the same about them.
I still feel the same too. One thing that is of note is that they overcame their Iranian hump in the qualifying.
Mm.
They managed to get the better of Iran, which was the first time in 11 or 12 years I remember reading about. But they do need Son to have a better support system and other players to step up. And I hope Paulo Bento can get that in time for this for this team. I still feel the same about them. I don't really have much to comment on. They only played a couple of friendlies this month, one of which was a 2-2 draw to Costa Rica.
Yep.
They could come out of their group. I actually think they're the third best team in their group. I put them slightly ahead of Ghana, but
Really? Okay.
I
Interesting.
do, yeah.
Okay.
Uh, so yeah, I still feel the same.
Yeah, I don't really feel any different about South Korea. I feel like they're gonna struggle mightily at this World Cup. I feel like it could be a similar situation to the last World Cup, even though they got the win over Germany. But in the first two games, just a little bit uninspiring, and it was pretty much Son or bust. That's pretty much what it was for the last World Cup. Now Roberto Martinez's side, they had quite a few injuries, but I honestly, if there's any big team from Europe that will go out of the group stage, I think it's Belgium. I don't really feel any confident with this team. And yes, KDB is playing amazing football, but that defense will not give me any confidence. Yes, they have the best goalkeeper in the world, but that defense in front of him is not good enough. I'm leaning towards lacking right now. I wasn't too impressed by them in the two Nations League games, and obviously they finished second in the group. It's a bit difficult because obviously they didn't have Lukaku, which is obviously a big part to what Belgium want to do. How do you feel? How do you feel about Belgium heading into this World Cup?
I think they're lacking, but just whenever you have doubts for them, sometimes I could just turn it up and just lambast teams. And I remember I did a reaction video to their 4-1 loss to the Netherlands this summer when they got humiliated, and then they turned around and they sent Poland to the cleaners.
Oh
They
yeah,
still are a team that is stacked, but I think what's really going to determine how well they do is the fitness of Kevin De Bruyne, and I think that whenever he comes off the field, they're just a different team
yeah.
structurally, and it's a night and day difference. I just it just looks like it's poised to be another cycle where maybe they get out of the groups, of course, maybe they go to the quarters, and then they bow out from there against a superior side. I'm kind of amazed. Roberto Martinez is still there after 4 years. I don't think he's necessarily a poor manager. I just don't think
This is definitely his last tournament with Belgium.
it has to be. Yeah, even if they win it somehow. Um, yeah, I think they're lacking right now, but I don't feel confident in saying that because they could easily, bulldoze through their group and go on another deep run. I just don't anticipate it happening, though.
It's a tough group they're in, though, so they cannot take any team lightly. Otherwise, because Canada can beat them, Morocco can definitely beat them, and Croatia can definitely beat them. So Belgium got to be careful at this World Cup. It's not as the last World Cup where they had Tunisia and Panama, and then obviously England. It's not the same thing here. They got a tough group. All three games are going to be brutal. Costa Rica, you know what? I'm feeling a little bit better about them. And that's because they have this 18-year-old guy called Jefferson Benete, who just made the move to Sunderland in the championship. And he could be the breakout star in this World Cup. I'm going to say that right now, people. I would keep an eye on him because he's been fantastic recently, club and country. And Costa Rica, we know they're going to be the bottom team in their group, but they're going to make life difficult. Hey, it wouldn't even surprise me if they got a result against Spain because they have Keylor Navas. We know they're going to be defensive, and they could get one counterattack, and that can be enough. Now, against Germany and Japan, could be difficult. How do you feel about Costa Rica?
Well, where would you put them, you say?
I wouldn't put them in good watch out, so I'll just put them in still feeling the same.
I think that's fair. Yeah, I would actually do the same for the most part. That first match against Spain, I've been feeling for a long while now. That's a good candidate for being a very long, drawn out, scoreless chess match of just one side trying to unlock the other. Costa Rica putting numbers behind the ball.
So what you're saying is Spain versus Sweden 2.0, but just Costa Rica to replace Sweden.
Yeah, with Keylor Navas in goal, which is like a cheat code. But
yep.
yeah, I think Costa Rica still got it. And the way they turned things around in qualifying, coming out of that hole they were in, they got 19 of the last 21 available points in qualifiers.
Crazy.
Luis Fernando Suarez, he took on a very difficult job when he first came in. I didn't think they were even going to qualify, but this generation of primarily very old players, they've managed to squeeze out one more ride for the road. And I think it's going to be very difficult in a group with Germany and Spain. But they look like what you expect from Costa Rica, the old typical Costa Rica. And I haven't really changed my thoughts on them that much, so I still feel the same about them.
Now, the next team, I would put them in confident, but I'm going to put them in good watch out. People are going to be surprised again by the Danes. I'm telling you right now, they're going to win that group. Kasper Hjulmand is that guy. He's one of the best international managers in the world, and I think everybody will maybe look at the squad and think, okay, maybe not good enough, but Denmark, man, they just play some good football. They really do. And if Kasper Dolberg is the key. I'm not worried about Eriksen. Eriksen, we know, is quality. Kasper Dolberg, if he can be that main guy and the main striker, the Danes can go far in this World Cup. I'm loving what they're doing, and I still feel confident about them. I said good watch out. I wouldn't put them at the level of maybe Croatia and Brazil, but I would say good watch out.
I think at the very least, I'll put them at good watch out. I might even consider putting them at confident. I really like what Denmark has done. And I like how they've managed to keep their form riding out from the last European Championship. And in this squad, I noticed that in the post-match with France, that 2-0 win over them at Parken Stadion, Hjulmand had the players gathered around and he was giving like a pep talk. And I think these guys really believe in him. And I think that they're entering this tournament with a lot of self-belief. With Eriksen back in the squad, him being in the form that he's in. And also, like we saw in the last Euros, they have a lot of go-to goal scorers. They have Eriksen, they have Christensen, they have Vestergaard, they have Mela. A lot of guys have stepped up and have found the back of the net. And I think being as well drilled as they are, this team cohesion, they can go very far. And I think they are going to go let's say very, very far.
Ooh.
I have them as confident, but I could see them as good watch out, of course.
We could switch them to confident. I think we could switch them to confident. Even though they lost to Croatia, I'm still very confident with this side, and I think they're confident, and their fans should be confident. So shout out to any Danes watching the video. Now another team I would maybe put in good watch out is Japan.
Agreed.
Remember Football Pharaoh when they lost their first two games against Oman and Saudi Arabia, and everybody was like, "Oh my God, Japan might actually miss the World Cup." This and that. To think where they're at right now, the football that they're playing, the squad that they have, they could be a sneaky team to upset Germany and Spain and advance out of their group. I think maybe a year ago you would have given them no chance if you would have told them that, hey, you would be in a group with these two teams. You would be like, nah. Right now, I think Japan are going into this tournament very confident, and they know what they're going to do. And I think with the way they play, and especially how good they are on the counterattack, especially because they know that, okay, Germany, Spain, they're going to have all the possession. Costa Rica could be a difficult game for them. I just think they have so much quality on the counterattack. So I would put them in good on watch out.
Yes, I agree. I put in a good watch out. And we know that unlike Costa Rica, Japan is going to go after other
Yep.
teams because that's how they play. They play very fluid, technical, pressing style of game. And they really suffocated the U.S. in the last match. We had very few looks on goal. They sussed us out. It seemed like in the midfield they won almost every 50-50 challenge. And I think Japan, with Hajime Moriyasu as their manager, they're going to be feeling like they can go one step further this time than they did in Russia 2018. It's a tall task. I think they have to get 3 points on Costa Rica.
Oh yeah, no doubt. If they don't get 3 points against Costa Rica, they can kiss goodbye any chance of getting out of the group, in my opinion.
Yeah, and with Spain and Germany, as we'll get to in a moment, not looking particularly convincing because we know that Enrique and Flick are still like crafting their squads in their own image. Japan has had a manager that's been there for a while now, and I think that everything we just said, they're coming into this World Cup with an intent, and I think they're gonna, at the very least, they can come close to coming out of the group.
You know what? Football Pharaoh, I'm kind of leaning them to get out of that group. I really do. I think they've been playing some excellent football recently.
Ooh.
I really do. I think it could be a sneaky, sneaky pick, but anything's possible in the World Cup. Yep, the next team, I'm going to just put them right here as well. Do you want to go first? Because this is the thing, though, with Serbia. I think they have a fantastic team. And with Mitrovic and Vlahovic and these two strikers, I just call them the two bulldozers from Serbia. These guys are so physical, quick, great on the ball. They're going to be an absolute menace to Brazil's defense, Switzerland's defense, and Cameroon's defense. Still have a question mark with their defense, but Stojkovic has got this team playing some good football. They have creators on the pitch. But always it is, when you expect something from Serbia, they kind of let down. I'm hoping that's not the case here because they have a really, really good team at this moment. I think they're going to be confident, and I'm confident in them.
They're great in transition as well. When I
Yep.
saw in the Nations League against Norway and Slovenia, this is the time for Serbia, if it's going to happen now, to get out of the group stage, live up to your billing as a dark horse, to get out of that first round for the first time as an independent nation. It has to happen now. We've been teased in previous cycles. Pretty much every World Cup they've qualified for this century, we were told, oh, they dominated qualifiers, they made it directly, this is the year. And this gives them a rematch here with the Swiss and Brazil. It's a tough group for everybody, especially Cameroon. I feel bad for Cameroon. They're a very, very talented side. Easily behind Croatia, the second best team in the Balkan region. And I hope they do come out. I want to see some Eastern European representation in the knockout stages. It is the lingering doubt over the inability to rise to the occasion on the grand stage that would probably make me put them at good watch out, but I could see a case for confident.
I'm loving this side. I really do. Even though their away kits are absolute garbage, and Puma should ask for a refund from them. But otherwise, I think this team are really, really good. Oh boy. what do we say, football Pharaoh? I mean, what do we just say about what?
Can you remind me who that is again?
I don't know.
I don't. I don't.
I don't really know.
I,
Apparently this nation is hosting the next World Cup. By the way.
oh, could have fooled me. Um. So this is not because we're Americans. I'm American. He's American Finnish. This is not just because we're Americans. It's just we didn't plan this out ahead of time, folks. To only have the U.S. in the panic right now. This is just how it played out. I I think it's time to worry, which a little bit, which yeah, it's panic mode. Not full on disaster catastrophizing mode, but it's you have to be worried with what you see with this squad. And Berhalter keeps talking about a system. I don't know what this. To me, this system exists to the extent the Tooth Fairy exists. I don't see it. Like I don't know what it is. I don't know if he's um, delusional or if he's just being stubborn because we look disjointed in those friendlies against Saudi and Japan. Yes, they were friendlies, of course. Yes, maybe a little bit of rustiness from not having played since the summer. One thing I am worried about is the fact that we're not getting very many prep games in the build up to the World Cup because the Nations League was taking place in UEFA. But right now, there's very few positives to take away from these two recent games.
The only
And
positive I'll say is I think we solved our goalkeeper issue. Matt Turner's going to start. I think that's the only positive we can take.
bro, I hope you're right, but something tells me this guy's going to start Zach Steffen just because he's from City. And at which point I might turn the TV off. And might,
Oh, Jesus.
but we have the issue though is not lack of talent. We have the guys, and I know that we've been struggling to an extent where some fans are even starting to like gaslight the team and question when maybe these players are just not good enough. I don't agree. I think the issue is coaching. I think it's like 90% with the coaching, and I think that Berhalter has a sort of sense of rigidity in his how he wants this team to play, and I get it. But this team is nowhere near long enough in its evolution to be playing a playing out the back style football. This is not City. He's not.
I mean, Farrell, if we play Aaron Long and Walker Zimmerman against England, we are going to get absolutely ripped apart. It's going to be a Thanksgiving massacre. It really is. Because I think that game is a day after Thanksgiving, if I'm not mistaken. I believe it is. If he's going to play those two center backs, it's going to be 4-0. One thing I'll say with the USA, there is talent on this team, but I have maybe seen, I'll say, two good performances from the USA under Greg Berhalter. Two, where I was like, you know what? We're actually building something here. I can see what Greg Berhalter is trying to do. Everything else, I think we have been lucky, hard work in a way. Otherwise, I think we're in for a disaster unless things completely change or Greg understands, okay, you know what? I can't play the way I want to do it. I'm going to have to adapt to the players and just be more direct. I think if we play direct, we're going to be good at this World Cup. If we play the same way that we've been trying to do it, we're going to get ripped apart.
Well, one of the issues we're having now, which is a really worrisome sign, is we're not scoring goals.
How do you think Jordan Pefok is feeling at home?
Uh, Pissed off. I think also.
Oh, he's laughing. I bet he's having a lovely time just saying, "Oh, you didn't take me. I'm a part of the team that are first place in the Bundesliga. I've scored 6 goals. You're not even going to select me."
Yeah,
he has to be on the plane.
he has to be, and we know that Greg likes to play favorites, and he had some grudges here and there. That's why John Brooks has really had no more presence on this team. And we know that he'll only make necessary changes and adapt when the team's backs are against the wall. I mean, this is the same guy who for a while kept insisting on fielding guys like Jackson Ewell and Giassi Zardes on the field until it just blew up to points where he had to relent and then make concessions. I'm worried. I'm worried, man. And this is just based on superstition, but maybe because the U.S. team sometimes is known for responding well to pressure, maybe this poor window will make us come out with a point to prove in that opening match against Wales, and we grind out something there. But it's not looking very hopeful. And could you see a scenario where we finish with 0 points?
I wouldn't. at this point, I would not be surprised. I really wouldn't because one thing that Greg said as well after the Saudi Arabia game, and we couldn't even score against Saudi Arabia's B team.
Yeah.
A goalkeeper who plays in the second division of Saudi football. Are you kidding me? No disrespect to Saudi football. It's the second division. Oh boy. And I'm looking at Christian Pulisic as well. The guy who was supposed to be the main guy for us, he's going to have to step up his performances. I don't care. I think a lot of people give him excuses and say, oh, injuries, what happens at club level. Pulisic needs to step up. He desperately needs to. And if he doesn't, I don't know what to say about him either, because this is now the moment that a lot of these players have been waiting for, and I just think this is not a great moment for the USA. And it's not even just based on these two games. I haven't been confident in this squad throughout the whole World Cup qualifiers. I really haven't.
No. Like we showed flashes of dominance in our qualification here and there, but at the end of the day, we barely missed out on that playoff spot. Mm-hmm. We barely qualified directly. I mean, even Costa Rica had a 9-point window. We never got that at any point. We just did the bare minimum. And another thing I want to allude to is fitness. We know there was a concern in the last game whether Gio Reyna had sustained a minor injury. We're going to need him. I think he offers that sense of like vitality and speed. And if Pulisic, like you said, doesn't step up and get out of the funk that he's in, we're going to need other guys to step up. Yep. It just feels increasingly like this is going to be a growing pain learning experience for 2026. That's what it feels like it's going to be.
And maybe these players need it, and then we need a different manager. That's just my opinion. You can say what you want, but I think these players will go through growing pains, but Greg won't be there on the other side with them if this goes terribly. So let's see what happens. If you're a USA fan, I mean, I didn't buy the new kit. I mean, hopefully nobody did, because that kit is one, garbage, and two, it might not be a memorable kit after this World Cup in a way.
We deserve group stage elimination just for that kit.
We don't even deserve to qualify for the World Cup with that kit. I mean, and a lot of kits in this World Cup. How are you feeling about Hansi Flick's Germany? Anything different, really?
I would put them somewhere between still feel the same and somewhat lacking. I think that those last two Nations League games against Hungary, all the respect in the world to Hungary, left me wanting from this German team. And I know that was his first loss as manager. But you go back to their qualifying, they weren't really challenged in that group. They had Armenia and Romania and Iceland. Germany will say what's up just because they're Germany, and I think that Hansi Flick that's why I think it's kind of fitting that they're in the same group with Spain, because I view them as sort of in similar situations where they have managers that are trying to craft the team in their own image. I think Germany, I would say, is somewhat lacking. I put them in lacking because
I agree.
I would have put them as still felt the same prior to this break, but they've been demoted a little bit. I just don't think they look like world beaters at the moment.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think they have a striker problem as well. Could we see Kai Havertz at the false nine? I don't think he really fits that position. I feel like he's better as a number 10.
Yeah.
Defensively, I have some concerns. I really do. I don't know who's going to be the two starting center backs. It could be Rudiger and Sule. Like, okay, Rudiger is good, but Niklas Sule, I don't trust him whatsoever. So I think there is some question marks with this German side, and I think they're also... Look, they got to be careful. They really do, or else they could go back-to-back World Cup group stage exits. Has that ever happened in German football history?
I don't believe so. In 2018, it was seismic because that was the first time they'd not passed the first round since like the 1950s. Yeah, like 38. Yeah, it's something insane. And they could be the casualty if your prediction comes true and Japan comes through that group.
But I didn't say which one of Germany and Spain will go out. I didn't say that, though. So
no, you didn't. No,
I did not. Okay, Louis van Gaal.
Confident.
Confident? Okay, I'll put it straight in confident. I think this team are looking good. See, the difference with Louis van Gaal in 2014 and this team, I think this team has a lot more quality compared to that 2014 team. Because that team, okay... Robin van Persie, Robin, they were fantastic. Can you name me the 3 center backs? There was De Vrij, Martins Indy. I don't remember who the third one was. They have Timber, Nathan Ake, Matthias de Ligt, and Van Dijk. Only question mark I have with this Dutch team is the strikers. Memphis Depay and Bergwijn just got to be on form. But hey, Louis van Gaal, he knows what he's doing, and he's been in this situation before. So I think people got to start worrying about the Dutch. It could be a sneaky team to make it to the semifinals.
This team is a night and day better than the 2014 side.
Yep.
That side entered that World Cup with low expectations, and they managed to make it to the semis that year. And a squad that had guys like Ron Vlaar. Don't know where the hell he is nowadays. They're riding high. And I think of all the European sides in this Nations League this window, they made one of the best cases, especially among the powerhouse nations. You also look at the bracket, the groups that they're in. They're in Qatar's group, so they avoid another heavy hitter until at least the quarterfinals, conceivably. Mm-hmm. And I read a stat somewhere on Reddit last week, I think it was. In the last 31 competitive games under Van Gaal, both in this stint and a previous stint, they're undefeated. They haven't lost.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, this guy, he knows the Dutch national side. And I hope that we see the likes of Depay and Dumfries, they stay fit. I know that Depay did not play in that last game against Belgium.
Yeah, he picked up an injury.
But they still won. They beat Belgium twice this cycle, and they ended up being the most dominant team in League A. And, man, they're looking really good. And I think they got a lot of confidence and a groove going on at the moment. Are they going to be among the 3 or 4 favorites? Most likely not. But they should – the quality they have now, they should make a last 8 appearance. I feel like they should. Anything less than that's a big disappointment. And considering coming off of that disappointing Euro with Frank de Boer as manager where they crashed out.
Don't even remind me of that bum ass of a manager. I'm sorry, that guy was a trash manager. He should never manage a club again. He failed at Crystal Palace and failed at Atlanta United. That just tells you what sort of manager Frank de Boer is. Anyways, continue. Sorry, I had to go on that rant.
No, that you're good. You're good. I just look at the group they're in, and they should come out of Ecuador and Qatar and Senegalese. We can get a quarterfinal clash with Argentina. That's what's looking like, and that could be a really, really intense match. I think they can give Argentina a great game. I feel really good. And you know, of all the big like powerhouse nations in like Western Europe, I feel like the Netherlands might not be given enough attention right now because they're looking like a potential sleeper team to go.
Yeah, I think they're doing their business quietly. Maybe that's the way they want it. They just want to do it very quietly. Nobody knows what's going on, and we can just do our own business. I think that's what Louis van Gaal likes as well. And this will most likely be Louis van Gaal's last ever managerial job. So I hope he does well for him because he's a legendary manager in football. He really is.
Yeah, for sure.
How do we feel about Robert Page in Wales? I mean, I can't read too much into the Nations League. Maybe these last 2 games you can. Back in June, I wouldn't read too much into it. I think it was just all about the World Cup qualifiers. Mentally, it was all there, and they did it, and they achieved it. I don't know if they're lacking right now or just kind of still feeling the same, or they're going to be a very difficult team, and just, they got quality. And that's the thing about Wales. They got quality to hurt teams like England, USA, and Iran. So what's your sentiment about Wales?
I have them that still feel the same. I think that the Nations League is just the nature of the beast. You're coming up against teams of equal or greater caliber. They were most likely always going to be relegated in the type of group that they were in. I'm jealous of Wales because I feel like they've actually had strong World Cup preparation against really high caliber sides, unlike the United States, which is just a circumstance of geography. I put them as still feel the same. And what worries me about Wales is that even when they are lacking, I still feel like they have that sort of like grittiness that you usually expect from like the British Isle nations that are not England. And they're back at the World Cup for the first time in over 60 years now.
Yep.
So this is like they're on cloud 9. I think they're going to be really up for the occasion. And it's going to be very paramount for Gareth Bale to get his teammates to step up. But Yeah, I don't. I'm not really too concerned for them. I don't think they're in any real present danger. I still feel the same that I've always felt about them.
All right, all right. Oh, Tata Martino. Oh, Tata. Um, I this is the thing with Mexico, right? And L3. They might be terrible at the moment, giving up a 2-0 lead over Colombia and then giving up 3 goals in 15 minutes. But then when it turns into the World Cup, they just switch it up and then they turn into world beaters.
Yep.
And then they go out on the round of 16. Are we saying lacking right now, or I'm not saying panic. They had a good performance against Ecuador. I mean, not Ecuador, Colombia. And then all of a sudden they just switched off. So I don't know what to expect from this L3 side. They have also a lot of question marks. Defense, center back, striker, and Chucky Lozano has not been good in the last, I would say, year. So he could be questioned as well. Are you saying lacking right now for L3?
I'm saying lacking. Yeah, and we know that once Mexico gets to the World Cup, for all we know, maybe they can pull out like a 0-0 draw against Argentina or something like that, and really uh, punch above their weight. Let's just say, like they've done in the last couple of cycles. But yeah, they've been stagnant, I think, in the last few years, and we saw this reflected in recent CONCACAF competitions, like the last Gold Cup in the Nations League, where the USA has gotten the better of them. Sometimes with B squads. Still relish that Gold Cup final. I don't think things are looking up for Mexico at the moment. You still give them like the round of 16 tax because of like their clout in this tournament and the fact that you can always expect them to get past the first round. But I don't see much that inspires a lot of confidence. There's a lot of frustration, I know, with the fan base at the moment with Tata Martino. And Matt, I don't know. Like, he's bringing in a lot of Liga MX guys, and you know that there's a lot of question marks when he's talking about, like, there's a conversation of Chicharito coming back into the squad.
He's not coming back. There's no way.
I don't think he will, but just the fact that it was like entertained for a bit, it's just like, ooh, I don't know. That's not very. That's not very. It's not a good sign. I think. I don't think they're in full blown panic mode, so I put them in lacking.
Yeah, I would agree. To be honest, with Cameroon, I know they called up now Mbuemo from Brentford. They lost to Uzbekistan. I'll repeat, Cameroon lost to Uzbekistan. This is not looking good for Cameroon at the moment, and they're in a tough group. And I'm saying lacking right now or panic because it ain't looking great.
I don't. The reason I don't put them in panic is just because I didn't really have very high expectations for them anyway. I thought they were very strong in the AFCON, like you said. They're on home soil, and they dug in deep to pull off that stunner against Algeria in the playoffs, albeit against an Algeria team that was struggling in their own right. And we know Cameroon have a lot of quality on their side. They're very much African royalty in terms of both domestic competitions and in World Cups. They've made, I think, 7 of the last 9 World Cups off the top of my head. That's pretty impressive. But look at that group they're in, man. With Brazil in your group, you're automatically fighting for one of 3 other spots.
I mean, so, and then they're up against Serbia and Switzerland. Oh,
yeah. Not even like a second or third tier European team, just 2 really good European teams. So, I think they're lacking. I think I would put them as lacking, but I didn't watch that match against Uzbekistan, so
I didn't either. All I just saw, they lost to Uzbekistan. That's enough for me. You can't be losing to Uzbekistan. Come on. They started Abubakar, Akambi, I believe, and they started Mbuemo. They started their good players, and they lost. This is not looking great for Samo Eto'o, who's obviously the president of the FA, and Rigobert Song, now that I got the name right. I can't believe I forgot about that. So I would say they're lacking right now. I would put them in panic, but we'll go with lacking right now. Do we put Qatar in the same thing, lacking right now? What if this tournament was in 2020, Qatar would have a good chance of getting out of that group.
Agreed.
2 years have passed, and they don't look the same team. I think because it's basically a club team, right? They've had the same players for the last 5 years, right? And they're treating it like a club team. They have a lot of preparation. They've been in the Nations League. They played in the Gold Cup. They've played in the Copa America. But right now, this team don't look good. And I think they're conceding a way too easy goals at the moment. I think Felix Sanchez has a tall order at hand. But hey, look, they're the host and anything can happen. Are you saying lacking right now for Qatar?
It's between lacking and panic. This was a team whose trajectory I actually thought as time went on, as we got closer to the World Cup, they would get better and better because the pressure is on them. And they were stellar in that Asian Cup in 2019, and they had a really good performance when they were invited to the Gold Cup. Players who play with each other day in and out in a calendar a year because of their play for virtually the same 2 or 3 clubs, like Al Duhail and Al Saad. And it's hard, man. I don't know if
I think I'll put them in panic right now.
we can put them in panic.
I don't think they look good at all. And remember, they were really good at that Copa America too. They pushed obviously Argentina in the last group stage game. I think it was 1-0. They obviously drew 2-2 with Paraguay. They were looking good, and then 2 years passed, and they were losing to Luxembourg, Azerbaijan.
Yeah.
Okay, Gold Cup was good, but you could see that defensively they were not strong, and if they're not scoring, they are going to get blown out. So I'm a little bit worried for Qatar. I really am heading into this World Cup.
Yeah. Hey, look, the U.S. has company now.
Don't worry, people. I didn't make that just for that tier list or tier level, just for the USA. We got company now with Qatar.
Also, now that I think about it, just go back to Cameroon for a second. I might put them in panic. I don't know. I'm not sure. But more company, the better for the U.S.
More company, the better for the U.S.
But,
how are you feeling about Morocco now that obviously Salihamidzic got sacked before the September international break? I think the new manager's called Walid, if I'm not mistaken. I remember looking at that during the international break. I believe his name is Walid. I can't remember his last name. Ziyech is back and all these players. Morocco might be another team to good to watch out, because when they are playing at their best, they're a very good team. I think it's a mental thing kind of with Morocco. When the chips are down, they fight. But then maybe when they're a little bit too overconfident, then they really fall down. But I'm going to watch out for this team. I think this team are now looking a lot more fluid, and maybe seems like a much more happy camp, because we know with Salihamidzic, it's always a bit, turmoil, and he's got his agendas and maybe against certain players. How are you feeling about Morocco?
Yeah, it's good when one of your star players feels confident enough to come back into the squad with the managerial change. I believe his name is Walid Regawi, something like that. The new manager is Moroccan coach. I think they're in a better spot than they were a few months ago. And it's the Salihamidzic effect. We saw the same thing with Japan. Remember, he was the manager of Japan in 2018. He had some beef with players in the locker room. I don't know, maybe it's a recurring pattern with him. I don't know. And they fired him. They brought in a manager, and they did well at the World Cup, a home-based manager. I think with Morocco and the group that they're in right now, they could be spoiler to Belgium if, say, Belgium were to underperform. And they could be the benefactor of that and come through the group. I think with Morocco, of course, talent-wise, one of the best sides in Africa, easily. They were also a quality team in the last World Cup, but they got unlucky in the groups. They were in a very tough group with Spain and Portugal. And this time around, I think they will do better. Where are they now? I think they're improved, but I don't feel confident enough to say good. Watch out for these guys. What do you feel about it?
I think obviously it's 2 games, so it's a bit hard to kind of understand what the side. But I think just because of Salihamidzic is gone, I think it was inevitable that he was going to be sacked. I just think it took way too long. It would have been better before June, so then they have a bit more preparation, obviously with the AFCON qualifiers. I think good to watch out just based on the quality of the team. I think they're much more happier camp. So,
sure.
Do we agree on good and watch out?
Yeah, we can put them there.
All right. We'll put Morocco there. How are we feeling about Canada? Obviously, long time since they've been at the World Cup. John Herdman, we both love this manager. I love the Canadian team. I think they got a lot of quality players. Obviously, they're in a very tough group. I mean, that group, I honestly think that's the group of life. I think any of those teams can get out, and I think it's the only group of life at this World Cup. How are we feeling about Canada? Because obviously they had a game against Qatar, which they won 2-0. And then they had a game against Uruguay, which I think that's good preparation. I think Canada were smart in that situation. Let's play against a tough CONMEBOL team who are probably going to be making it out of their group, most likely. And they fared well, and I think they got a reality check. Okay, there's levels to international football. You can beat El Salvador, you can beat Honduras, you can beat Panama at home. When it's a neutral site, do you have it against the top quality teams around the world? And I think it was a good test for Canada. Are we still feeling the same about them?
I still feel the same about them. One reason that gives for pause is the recent player pay dispute that they had, where that denied them those 2 preparation games, I think back in June. There's also a question of potentially inexperience at the highest level for this squad. But for Canada, being here is the victory, I think. And also it serves as a preparation for 2026. Honestly, it pains me to say it because, we're Americans, but they're the best team in CONCACAF at the moment. They just are. I think the best coach in John Herdman. And their style, remember that match they played at home against the U.S. in Hamilton, Ontario, where they let the U.S. have possession and they just pounced us, and then in transition they punished. That could be well suited to a very attack-minded squad like Belgium. I mean, you wouldn't rule that out as a candidate possibly for being the upset of the first round.
And also, John Herdman has tried, I think he's tried 5 in the back, he's tried 4 in the back, he's tried Davis at left wing back, he's tried Davis at left wing. John Herdman's trying, and he's trying to see, okay, with the opponents that we're going to face, we can play a different couple of ways so that if we're in a winning situation, if we're in a losing situation, we can switch it up. So, look, Canada are preparing very well for this World Cup. I mean, compared to other nations in the CONCACAF, I think we got to hope that Canada do well just for CONCACAF reputation, because at the moment, everybody else is going to go out. Maybe Mexico can, of course, because it's Mexico at a World Cup. Poland up next. This is also a tricky one to understand, because I haven't really been impressed by them in the last 2 games. I haven't really been impressed by them in the Nations League. I think they have a very talented team. Obviously, Lewandowski, Zielinski, Szczesny, all of these sort of quality players, but I feel like they're playing a little bit defensive football. They had a couple good opportunities against the Netherlands, which obviously Milik messed it up big time, but I don't know. I don't feel the greatest of confidence with Poland.
Yeah, I put them at still feel the same. I think that Mniszkiewicz has improved the side to the extent that they were really lacking in the last couple of previous tournaments, and being in a group with Saudi Arabia and Mexico, who's also faltering lately, I put them at just about fluid, just about where I thought they were a few months ago when they qualified via the playoffs. So, yeah, I don't expect – they're not a team I see going far, really playing the role of a surprise side or a dark horse. I don't see a quarterfinal appearance for them. It's really just a matter of getting out of the groups, which is something they've been unable to do. So, yeah.
Obviously, that game against Mexico is going to be pivotal. It's going to be absolutely pivotal to see who finished second in the group. But, hey, do not rule out Saudi Arabia either. All right, let me just put this team immediately there because, well, I mean, how many games are they now undefeated? 35?
Something like that, yeah. They're on the verge of breaking Italy's record.
I think they definitely will. But they are playing some fantastic football, Pharaoh. I mean, look, Scaloni has done a great job. I think to where they were at in 2018 with that tattooed Argentinian bulldog named Jorge Sampaoli, to where they are now, just the team is happy. They all have a good role. It's wonderful to see, and I think Argentina can win this World Cup. I genuinely do believe it. I think they have a favorable path to the final, even though they could face France in the round of 16, which could be very, very difficult, but I think this team are made for it. I think winning the Copa America really, really helped them a lot. So, any words on Argentina? We're obviously going to put them in confident.
Oh, is that why you have that shirt on? I thought you just liked the colors blue and white.
Well,
yeah, I'm confident. And I'll go ahead and say it. This is not a prediction. They're my favorite to win this World Cup.
Mine as well.
Because Lino Scaloni has finally got the blueprint needed. This team, for the first time in many years, is now structured in such a way where Messi accentuates the rest of the squad instead of the whole squad being built around just him.
Yeah, where it's not plan A, B, C, just Messi.
No, exactly. And we talk about Brazil having a strong qualification. Argentina got 39 points. They steamrolled just as well as Brazil did. And not having lost a match since the Copa America semifinal in 2019 against Brazil, we know after that match, they feel like they were wrong, that they should have gotten something out of it. It's almost as if a fire was lit after that match. And they've been unstoppable. They've been unstoppable. They're breaking through, beating their rivals in the final of Copa America last year, winning a finalissima against Italy this summer. In a very doable group, of course, decent path to at least the last 8. I think Argentina is going to – they should be – at the very least, they should make the semifinals this year.
I agree. What do you think about people if I were to tell you, oh, they only played Honduras and Jamaica in these 2 friendlies? What would be your response to that then?
Silly. It's silly because you play games primarily with teams that you can arrange meetups with, and people who say that, okay, well, they came through arguably one of the toughest World Cup qualifying regions in the world, and they did it without struggling at all, like they had in previous cycles. And they don't play Andorra and Liechtenstein day in and day out. They have to go play Bolivia and Ecuador, and those are not easy opponents. So, like Brazil, we're going to see if Argentina can continue that on against top European opposition. We're going to get a lot of answers to those kind of questions. One of the main things I'm looking forward to in this World Cup is how Brazil and Argentina play, how they translate that against the other big teams, because it's been 20 years since South America's won a World Cup.
That's a long time.
And the pressure is piling. And I think they're going to pass with flying colors. I think them and Brazil will pass with flying colors. And you could see it penciled in on your calendar, a clash with Brazil in that semifinal. If they both win their groups.
If that happens, that will be the biggest semifinals ever. I don't even care. Maybe Brazil-Germany was big. If it's Brazil against Argentina in semifinals of the World Cup, that is going to break viewership figures around the world.
Yeah. Argentina's really come into their own, and it'll be quite something if they manage to win what would be a 3rd trophy in a year after, of course, they lost those 3 finals in a row a few years ago. So
and then Messi retired after, one of them at least. I can't remember if he retired after the 2015 one, but yeah, look, I think Messi's happy, and I think this squad are looking very good. How about for also one of the other GOATs of football, and not Fernando Santos, by the way, people, for Ronaldo and Portugal. No. This team, man, football pharaoh. This is one of the most talented teams in the world of football. It just pains me to watch it. It pains me. They are managed by a dinosaur. I'm sick and tired of him. If this team had Mourinho or Ruben Amorim for Sporting or Conceição from Porto, Portugal will be one of the favorites. They have Fernando Santos, who will pick his favorites like Carvalho, and maybe even some people would say drop Ronaldo because he's put in some pretty bad performances recently. I kind of feel still the same about them. I don't think they're lacking. I just kind of like I know what I'm gonna expect from this side.
I've been very bullish on Portugal, perhaps more than most. I feel like, look, they're going to go as far as Fernando Santos will allow them. With the right manager, I think they're World Cup contenders.
Exactly.
And we saw the worst of his tactical acumen in that last match against Spain, where they had no business losing to that Spanish squad, man. You could tell even Spain, the way they were celebrating after that goal. Like, they went away to Lisbon and they didn't expect to win that match. I mean, maybe I'm too optimistic on Portugal. I have them at good watch out. I do, because I think that even in spite of Fernando Santos, they're still a side that has way too much depth to flop.
Okay, they have all the quality though, football Pharaoh, but it's this similar thing to kind of like the USA. They have all this quality. I'm not comparing the USA and Portugal's quality. Portugal have way better quality than the USA. But the managers, they dictate the way the team plays. And if you look at Portugal, if you allow this team to just play some free-flowing football, if they had a manager like Tite who just allowed them to play football, Portugal would be amazing. But Fernando Santos is stuck in I don't know what age. Ice age, dinosaur age, whatever age. Because just sometimes it's so frustrating to watch. It's perfect example is the Spain game. They look good for the first 55 minutes. What does he do? Sit back, sit back, sit back. Whereas if he kept on going with the same tactics, they could have easily won that game. It made a couple of good substitutions. No, let's go in a shell. Let's defend like they did against Serbia, like they did against France in the last Nations League. This is the same pattern with Fernando Santos. But you say good and watch out. You're the guest, so we're going to go with you.
Well, it's between that and still feel the same. What was really messed up was after that loss to Spain, he said in a post-match interview that, I'm not worried. I still have a contract extension to 2024. And you don't want your manager saying stuff like that. That's just very complacent, number one. Careless, really. I mean, if you can't be happy with that performance just because your job is not necessarily on the line. So that is a flashpoint of a worry right there. The thing with Portugal is they're not – in recent years, they don't do as well in World Cups as they have in Euros. Like,
True.
Not even just the Euro 2016 victory, but even prior to that, like between Euro 2000 and 2012, they went very far. They made like semifinals, and but in World Cups they've only had that one semifinal appearance in 2006, and that's it.
That's true.
So could they be a big team that flops this tournament because of Santos?
Not a lot of people talking about that.
They could, which is why for me, them and France are the two hardest ones for me to fully assess exactly if they can go on another deep run or if they're going to flop out of the tournament. So, yeah, I could see a case for still feel the same. But, yeah, maybe I'm just a little bit optimistic about them.
You're very optimistic about them. I got to be honest, Football Pharaoh, but we'll go with you. You are the guest. The AFCON champions, Senegal. I would say still good on watch out. I still think this team are playing very good football, and if there's any team from CAF that are going to do well at this World Cup, it is going to be them. But remember last time as well, they had all the expectations. They were in the group of life, and they failed. Obviously, it was down to, I think, yellow cards, if I'm not mistaken. It was a disciplinary thing,
Yes.
And that's why they got knocked out. But I think this team can easily finish in the first two positions. I'm really hyped up about Senegal. I think they have a great opportunity of making it to the quarterfinals. I genuinely do think so. With the way England are playing, if England win their group, they meet in the round of 16. Hey, I could see Senegal winning that game. What do you say about them?
Yeah, I think by far and away they're Africa's best prospect to go on a deep run, both because of the group that they're in, the side of the bracket they land on, and overall just because they're the best team in Africa. I mean, they won the AFCON earlier this year. They seem to be a more mature and complete side than they did last time around, I think. They're not always flashy at times. I remember in the last few competitive games in that AFCON, they did struggle to score goals despite all the quality they have. But I think they're still odds-on favorite, possibly the only odds-on favorite African side to progress past the first round. You said you would have them at good watch out.
I still think I'm very highly confident on this team.
So would you put them at the same feeling then, technically, or?
Yeah, maybe I would put them on the same feeling. I mean, they had two games. I believe they drew with Iran 1-1, and they beat Bolivia. So I mean, it's pretty hard to understand. But yeah, maybe I would still feeling the same. I think I think that's better because I haven't really changed my feeling. I still think this team is a good team. And one thing for sure is defensively, they are so solid, very solid defensively. I think that's going to be the key thing for Senegal's success at this World Cup. Defensively, they must be strong.
And for people watching, remember, just keep in mind, still feel the same can be either good or bad. Whether you still feel not confident or you still feel really good. In Senegal's case, yeah, it still feels really good. If they don't come out of the group this time,
I would be shocked. I honestly, I think that would be a big disappointment.
bigger than last time around because they should do it against a less developed Ecuador side and host nation Qatar. You'd have to think
Yeah,
that they're the manifestly they are the top two side in their group.
exactly.
Um, so yeah,
Switzerland. Now,
you go
this
first.
I don't know what to say about the Swiss. Because at the beginning of the Nations League, I was like, oh, okay, this is not the greatest. But they've been picking up form. And then they're playing that good Swiss kind of football where it's very, very solid, very structured. And now Morit Yakin knows, I think he has found his squad, and now the squad are responding to him. So there's always this thing with the Swiss. They might not be the most glamorous, but they will never give up. And we saw that against France. And we've seen that against Serbia in the last World Cup. So I think they're playing very good football at the right time. Maybe in occasions during the Nations League they weren't the greatest, but at the latter stages in the last two games, better performances. So I would say good and watch out. I think they're going into this World Cup in good confidence.
I agree. I think Murat Yakin has steered the ship quite smoothly ever since Pekovic left, and they, after losing the first three matches in the Nations League, they rallied to sweep their last three, and they ended up staying afloat in Ligue A comfortably, ahead of the Czechs, I believe, the Czech Republic. They won their last three games. They beat Portugal. They beat Spain. And as we mentioned before, Switzerland is that team who you don't expect to really go on to win tournaments, but they can and do beat anybody on their day.
Mm-hmm.
They can and do. We've seen it in the last few competitions as well. Um, I think that they're a team that is well seasoned and they thrive in tournament atmospheres like this. And they're sort of like the Mexico of Europe because they usually get past the first round. They just don't go very far. They don't go much further. Round of 16 usually seems to be their ceiling in World Cups. Yeah, I think they're looking good, and I think Brazil's going to have very stiff opposition when they come up against them.
I don't think a lot of people are talking about that football, Pharaoh. That Brazil actually have a very tough group.
They
I
do,
they
yes.
got to be careful. I mean, obviously, like they should be making out of the group. I'm not suggesting that, but they, if they're not careful, they can easily finish third because Switzerland and Serbia are no joke. They are absolutely no joke. I think you should
No,
go. I think you should go first about England. I'm not. You know what? I'll say this. I'm not a panic with them,
no, me neither.
but lacking for sure.
Lacking, yep. Yeah, same. I was going to say lacking. Um, it's hard to go to put a team that played in the Nations League in panic mode right now because this World Cup is unique in that this is the first ever World Cup that I can remember where you have another competition that took place directly before it. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean?
Yeah.
It's usually like slow build up friendlies, weeks of no action, etc. So I can't begrudge England too much for struggling in a group with Germany and Italy and a Hungarian team that everybody underestimated. But the thing is, Southgate ball might be coming to its end. And the overwhelming sensation I get from England fans is that this window for a lot of them feels like it could be like the beginning of that phase of an end
Mm.
to to his managerial time. But I put them in lacking, man. There's we talk about teams that struggle to find the back of the net. They're really struggling to score.
I
Minus
mean,
that
I
last
mean,
match.
but yeah, before the Germany game, they had only one goal, and it was a penalty, I believe.
Yes, minus that last match against Germany, which they did well to rally and get a result in. Arguably should have won. Um, they're struggling, and I think that Southgate again he keeps reverting back to like his pragmatic approach that really stifles their creativity up front. And I think they'll be okay for the first round, maybe even the first knockout round. But the Nations League we saw in June and this month could be an indication that when they come up against another big side, like maybe France in the quarters, they're not going to have what it takes to come through that and go on another deep run here. So I do think it's worrisome. They're lacking, but there's no need for panic.
I think a lot of people would disagree with us. I think a lot of people would say panic, but
Sure.
I think, see,
Well, England fans are always pessimistic.
well, yeah, they are, but I think the biggest question mark I have obviously is the creativity and the goal scoring, but defensively, they don't look solid like they have with Southgate during his tenure. I think that's a big question mark with
Yeah.
Southgate at the moment. Defensively, they don't look strong. And I mean, look, I think a lot of people are going to talk about it, but if you're going to start Maguire, you're asking for trouble now because the guy, you can tell he's not confident, and you need to get Harry Kane goal scoring. So they're definitely lacking, and I think they're at the lowest lacking. It's not panic just yet because you can tell this team, they could switch it on like that. They did that in the last 20 minutes against Germany. You just see the football that they were playing was so much better. They just need, I think Southgate just needs to just go away from his old school ways and just let this team play because they have the quality. I think nobody can deny that. It's just, I think the manager's holding them back.
They do, and I think that he plays in a style that's a little bit too afraid
Mm.
for England, even when it gets them good results. A good example of that would be that Euro round of 16 game against Germany, where yes, they won that match, but the reason it took them so long to find the breakthrough and lead was because England, he was still having them set up in such a way that was really limiting them up front, I feel.
Yeah.
And it almost cost them in that match as well against Yogi Löw's side at the time. Um, they have the quality, like you said. They could easily, under the right circumstances, be a top 3, 4 team in this tournament. It's just, I don't know how exactly well they're going to do. It could just be an average World Cup for England. Um,
I think it's quarterfinals max. That's my feeling at the moment.
Unless they get lucky and they get like a good side of the bracket where some of the big teams go home early, and
Mm, yep.
but
I agree. I agree. How do we feel about Tunisia? I mean, they are sneakily having a very good summer and September where they did defeat Chile. They beat Japan 3-0. I think they played the Comoros 1-0. And we know Tunisia. I think a lot of people underestimate this side and think, oh, Tunisia, there's not the big stars, but they can make life difficult. Oh, they lost obviously 5-1 to Brazil. I forgot about that, but they got an early red card in the game. I think they're a sneaky team in a way where people underestimate them and then they surprise everybody, right? That's what I kind of feel like with Tunisia. I think they get a lot of disrespect. Maybe they don't play the most sexiest of footballs. They're not playing Jogo Bonito or anything like this, but they just get results. Now, I think they have a better chance than Australia to finish second in this group if France completely implode. So, how do we? I honestly think would be good and watch out because I think Tunisia are sneakily doing well.
okay, I would put them somewhere between either good to watch out to still feel the same. Um, like we mentioned, it can be difficult to assess teams that are not playing very many competitive games this
Yeah.
calendar year. But the ones that stand out, including that convincing win over Japan and the South American opposition in Chile, under their new manager Jalal Kadri, they were having a lot of issues earlier this year with their prior manager that they sacked. They could be the team, the Arab country that has a breakout performance in this World Cup. And if there's going to be a team that challenges France and continues that winner's curse, it could be Tunisia. And I agree with you that they stand a better chance of doing that than Australia do. Um, I just saw you put them at still feel the same.
Yeah, I'll put them at the highest possible of still feeling the same because I feel like they're doing very well, and
Yeah,
not a lot of people are talking about that in a way.
yeah, same here. I would put them there. Keep an eye on them. I mean, they're looking just like Iran to come out of the group stages for the first time ever. That's something they've never been able to do, despite making it now, I think, to their sixth World Cup. And like you said, no real standout players that are like world class or anything, but they're a plucky North African team. They can be very difficult, and usually when they make it to World Cups, interestingly enough, they don't get bossed around. Like they'll get a result somewhere. Like they usually end with a draw or a win somewhere. Um, so yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens with
We'll
Tunisia.
we'll see. And the last team, it is then Uruguay. Obviously, no more Tabares. It's been a while. It's been a while. Obviously, we'll never see him manage again. Good old Oscar Tabares. With obviously now Diego Alonso. They picked up a bad injury though. Aroja's going to be gone for the World Cup,
Yep.
which is a huge,
Yeah.
huge piece for them. I mean, he's such a amazing center back, and if you're gonna lose a guy like that, obviously you still got Godin and Jimenez and these sort of people, but they're not Araujo at the moment. So you still got Suarez, Cavani, Nunes. Honestly, if you look at Uruguay's team, you're like, damn, this is a really good team on paper. And we know Uruguay. I think with Tavares, it was just getting stale. It was just getting way too defensive and just no passion anymore. And you could just tell on the field. But now with Diego Alonso, a bit more attacking prowess, much obviously structured at the back, the old school Uruguay way. Maybe not the greatest results during the September break. Obviously, they lost to Iran 1-0 and beat Canada 2-0. But I'm still feeling very good about Uruguay's chances in this World Cup.
Where would you put them?
I still kind of feel the same. The September break and the June break hasn't really given me any difference with this side.
I would put them at still the same, but I flirted with the idea of slightly lacking. And that's only because of the lack of adequate preparation and the fact that I don't feel under Diego Alonso they've really been properly tested. You may remember that he came in during the final phase of their qualifying where they had that easier schedule. Remember they played against the likes of Venezuela and
Bolivia,
Paraguay.
Peru.
Well, it cost Oscar Tabarez his job, despite, yes, not really having anything new to provide to the team, was they had a stretch of really tough games back in October, November of last year. Because a couple of their games got backlogged. They ended up playing Argentina twice. They played Brazil once, and I think they played Colombia or something. They picked up 1 point out of 15 from that window. It was bad. So I'm a little skeptical of Uruguay at the moment, but I look at their group that they're in, and I think that they're just better. They're just better than Ghana, and they're better than South Korea, and they should come through. So because of that, I put them at relatively. I still feel the same about them, but I'm a little worried for them.
Interesting. Good. You actually made some good points there that they did actually have a very easy schedule at the later stages of the qualifying, and that definitely helped them. And obviously, the goal against Peru, where Peru got screwed over in a way. So, yeah, look, I mean, Uruguay Ghana, that game I think it's going to be. I think both teams are going to come into that with 3 points, and it's going to be for all the marbles to see who finishes second. That's my early prediction for that group don't be surprised if Ghana win that game just based on emotion and just the motivation to win the game will be high. But there's our tier list people. You can see confident. We have a couple teams good and watch out. A couple, maybe you got to keep an eye on Japan and Iran. I think these teams are now really firing well, and they're going to be the good representation at the World Cup from the AFC, because at the beginning I was like, oh, AFC are not going to do well. I think now they're having much better chances, and then you just see a lot of European teams in lacking right now, and that's because they have the quality, and it's not just because of this window, but it's been now for the last couple windows where these teams are not looking the greatest, in my opinion, and I think they could be playing a lot better. And then panic right now, the USA and Qatar, I don't think it needs any explanation. Both of them are not looking the greatest. They really aren't. So yeah, any final thoughts, Football Pharaoh, before we head out? And yeah.
It's interesting, despite all the fact we've had a lot of action this month, for a lot of these teams, the needle has not really moved that much in terms of where we assess where they are. Like they're more or less where they were 4 months ago, 6 months ago. But, a good number of sides have made a good case for why they should be taken more seriously. Morocco being one of them, Swiss and Serbia, definitely, Croatia. So it's going to be a very exciting World Cup. I expect it to be very competitive. And hopefully we see a couple surprises.
There's always surprises at the World Cup, Football Pharaoh. And who knows, because it's held in the middle of the season in circumstances that we've never had. Are we going to get a first-time winner this year? People are not thinking about it. Now, who that is, I don't know, but don't rule that theory out, because there's always that possibility. But Football Pharaoh, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. As always, we're going to have you, of course, on before the World Cup, before a couple of weeks out, and then we'll kind of see maybe the squads will be announced, how we're feeling, or we could just have a whole hour discussion about the USA and what we think, what we do with the lineup and what tactics we would do. Maybe we can do something like that. But where can the people find you? Remember to subscribe to Football Pharaoh's channel. I will have a link to it in the description down below.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. I love dissecting this and going through the tiers. It was a good idea. It was creative. And yeah, guys, you can find me on my YouTube channel, Football Pharaoh. You can also find me on Twitter, Football Pharaoh at Soccer Pharaoh. That's Football Pharaoh at Soccer_Pharaoh. Thanks for having me on, Michael. We'll do something again before Qatar comes.
Well, we're 50 days away. 50 days away. We've been waiting a long time, waiting longer this time around for a World Cup, and obviously we're gonna wait shorter time for the next World Cup, which will be hosted in the USA, Canada, and Mexico. By the way, I heard that rumors the final would be in Dallas. World Cup organization or whatever committee for 2026, do not host it in Dallas. Why are you doing that? It's either New York or LA.
Yeah.
No offense to Dallas or anything like that. It's either New York or LA. No discussion. So
hoping for New York this time.
It should be in New York.
Yeah, but it's only an hour away from me, so hopefully I get to go there.
Oh wow, that would be amazing. But people, give me your thoughts in the comments. How are you feeling about your national team? Like I said at the beginning of the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new around here. Like the video, and of course we're gonna have a lot of World Cup content now coming out on the channel as we slowly build up to it. And I'm already getting goosebumps. Not for the USA, just for the World Cup, because this is my favorite tournament, and I think it's everybody's favorite tournament because this is where moments are made. And let's see what moments will be made at this World Cup. From me and Football Pharaoh, have a beautiful day. Stay safe in this crazy world, and adios.
Peace.